Good afternoon. I'm Zeiler from Great American Eclipse. Thank you. I operate the website together with my wife, Polly, here in the front row. Feel free to approach us throughout this conference. We're friendly and we'll help you out. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is, and I'll be pretty quick about this, is I'm going to talk about a simple model that I developed to predict eclipse visitation and where traffic issues might arise. As a wise person said once, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So hopefully this is a useful one. And intentionally, I built some wiggle room into this model, and the wiggle room is based on the fact that there's some intangibles that are very difficult to model. For example, weather may be good in one region and not so good in another. There may be special events that draw people, and it's really hard to model all of the various factors that may influence eclipse visitation. But I gave it a go, and I began with a thought experiment. And my thought experiment was before the 2017 eclipse. I thought to myself, what was the likelihood that somebody in Boulder, Colorado would go drive up to Wyoming to the center line of the eclipse? And Boulder, Colorado is a 200-mile drive along I-25 to the center of the eclipse. And I thought about it, and I came up with a guesstimate, and my guesstimate was that between one half of 1% and 2% of the population of Boulder would be moved to drive up for the eclipse. And so my model is based on two assumptions. First, it's based on what is the likelihood that somebody in a given location would drive. And I added a decay model to that. And what I did was, for 200 miles, it was those fractions that I just gave you. And then I halved those numbers for 400 miles drive distance, and then halved it again for 800 miles drive distance, because obviously the closer you are, the more likely you would drive. And the second assumption that I made was that you would drive the shortest path to the eclipse. I know that some people may drive a little, not quite the shortest, but on average, it all averages out, I think. So this is a map that I call a drive shed map. And just as water accumulates from streams to small rivers to large rivers, this shows the shortest driving distance from every county seat in the nation and the shortest path. And those circles along the path, this is from those circles accumulate those visitation, and the largest circles are where I expect the largest visitation. Next. I don't have the, oh, here it is. Okay, all right, so these are the results from 2017. I won't dwell on this, but I'll just point out a couple of facts. After the eclipse, I surveyed a lot of the reports of eclipse visitation to give myself a grade and see how I did. I actually did pretty good. I only had one failure, and the failure was in Wyoming, where the visitation far exceeded my expectation. An interesting fact of Wyoming is that a state with a population of 500,000 people drew an astounding sum of 1 million visitors. So think of that, the population of Wyoming tripled on eclipse day. That's unprecedented. I can't think of any other historical event where something like that is taking place, and it took place all across the country, and it was like 20 Super Bowls simultaneously across the country. So that's the impact of the eclipse. All right, so quickly, I used detailed census data and GIS data. For those who don't know, I have no transportation expertise per se, but I am an expert in geographic information systems, and I know how to wrangle geographic data. So I took the census data and I developed this map. You'll see that Texas has 12 million people who already live inside the path. All they need to do is step outside their porch and they'll see the most glorious sight of their lives. After Texas, the other states that are quite populous are Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and New York, upstate New York. Now, these are the people who already live inside the path. Another remarkable fact about the 2024 eclipse is the proximity of major population centers to the eclipse path. A sum of 31 million people already live inside the path. But if you look at these numbers, and these are 100-mile bands, except they go to 200-mile bands further out. But you'll see, looking at this, that you can make the definitive statement that half the population of the United States is within 250 miles of the path of the eclipse. So think about the impact of that. It's so accessible to many, unlike the 2017 eclipse, which passed through some population centers, but not quite like this. Look at the eastern seaboard. The major cities from Boston all the way down to Philadelphia, those are all within 200 or 250 miles of the eclipse. So it's going to be much more impactful than the 2017 eclipse. Another factor that's going to provide more visitation is the recent memory of the 2017 eclipse. There was a buzz among the population. So many people either saw the eclipse or heard about the eclipse from the people who saw it. So that's another factor that will drive visitation. Okay, so these are my applying the same model I had in 2017. These are the number of visitors that I expect. And if you want to do an economic impact, the various economic models that I've seen estimate that something on the order of each eclipse visitor brings something on the order of between $200 and $300 of economic impact to that state. So if you multiply these numbers by that dollar amount, you can start to speak intelligently to the local chambers of commerce and so forth about what the economic impact will be to your state. You can also say something about where the major traffic issues are likely to be. Again, as I said earlier, the yellow circles in the path are proportional to the expected visitation. If you go on my website, you'll see that we have both national pages and pages, state-by-state pages. On the state pages, you'll see these numbers broken down by state and individual maps that go in a little more detail about the impact. One of my to-do projects is to take the data that I have and further refine it and give some more precise predictions for, on a more granular basis, county by county, where they may expect an impact. And all of these maps that I'm showing here, you can find on the website. Okay, now let's move to the annular eclipse. The annular eclipse is not quite as populated as the total solar eclipse, but it goes through what is arguably the most scenic spots in the United States, the Four Corners region. And if you could design an eclipse path that maximizes travel through national park units in the United States, that's it. I made a map that I will show tomorrow that identifies every national park, national monument, a national recreation area, and so forth for National Historic Park. And you'll see a map of that in my presentation tomorrow. But it's a dramatic confluence of events. Another favorable aspect about this eclipse is in the Four Corners area, October is one of the sunniest months of the year. So we've got great weather prospects for this coming October. The most populous states, the most are Texas, New Mexico, and Oregon. Idaho has 0 because it just clips a tiny corner of the state that's wilderness. Okay, and then these are the number of people that within, now earlier I said that half the population is within 250 miles of the total solar eclipse. It's a bit broader for this eclipse. It would be more like 700 miles or so to reach half the population. And this is my drive shed map for the annular eclipse. And what I did was I took my same model, but I adjusted it, and I adjusted it based on the simple fact that, in my estimation, people are more likely to drive long distances to see a total eclipse than an annular eclipse. That's natural. So I adjusted my numbers for my expectation, and my expectation was I looked at the relative numbers on our website. We have a popular page for the 2024 eclipse and a popular page for the 2023 eclipse, but we get about 4 times as much traffic, web traffic, on the 2024 eclipse. So I used that factor to weigh the numbers below. So Texas still gets quite a bit of visitation. My low estimate is 75,000. High estimate is 300,000. Utah gets the second largest amount based on it being the closest destination to the Southern California and major areas. You see, like Utah gets a lot of the upper states, but there's not so much population there except for Salt Lake City. But it's really Southern California that has the driver for the visitation there. So those are my numbers, and I'm sticking to them.